got one that can see.
Logic before authority.
Okay guys, we've got something here that we need to pay attention to. What you're seeing here is a radar wobble on the entire East Coast and some other regions. And this was caught by a YouTuber called Dutch Sense, and it's related to my last video where I was asking everybody if they had been feeling the ground shaking or buildings shaking, in which I got a ton of responses saying absolutely, all over the East Coast especially so. But we need to look at some other things that I think are ultimately related to this. So let's do that now. So let me show you here some things that would otherwise maybe they're not connected, but you have to wonder. Okay, take a look at this. Is down detector. It detects when, different services and websites are having trouble. And what we're focusing on here is the internet, basically, or like a cellular service, that type of thing. Okay, and internet. Take a look at this. Let's take a look at T-Mobile, for instance. Okay, so if we come down here and look at the last 24 hours, you can see this wave. See this wave here? Okay, well, that by itself doesn't mean a whole lot, right? But let's go to, let's look at AT&T. Let's go down to that one. Notice how it has the same wave? Okay. And we can look at WOW. We can kind of see them already, but there's a lot of them basically the same. Here's a somewhat different wave that has come back in higher again. Then let's look at a couple others here. Like, let's go down a little bit further. Really, about any of these, when you look at them closer up, you can see it, that there's a wave. Some of them are bigger than others. Like, take for instance cricket here. There you have the wave again. It's high, comes down lower, and goes back up. And this pretty much repeats across most of your telecom and internet services, even like Windstream here. Okay, got the wave again. Okay, so what is it that's going on here? Because we've got, to me it looks like an energetic frequency wave pattern that is somehow affecting this. And then, as you just noticed from the previous part of this video in the beginning, we have the radar imagery shaking backwards and forth in a wave pattern as well. And then we've got this going on. Okay, just ran a search for Gulfstream. First report: Gulfstream could collapse as early as 2025. And it goes right on down. Will the Gulfstream really collapse by 2025? You can see it goes right on, and there's more and more reports. And I've got some of these reports pulled up here so you can see them. Gulfstream in peril. Now, what is all this related to? Well, we're going to get to that. And I don't know the ultimate answer. I'm proposing the questions, you might say. Here's another one saying the same thing. And they've got their version of the story of what's going on there. Okay. It says, it said it's weakest in 1,600 years. Okay. So you're talking about warning signs of tipping point. Okay. and evidence of past collapses, resets. We're talking about literally a waveform, okay? And they're talking about ice ages and things like that going on, right? Here's another one. As you can see, very similar type imagery, very likely a similar story. Here's another one from CNN. As you can see, and talking about the same thing. Some of you will remember a little while back I put out a video where I was talking about this subject and the day after tomorrow. Remember that? Okay, come on over here. Let's take a look at this. Now, is the Gulf Stream collapsing? Do we have any evidence? I'd say we do. Look at this. Residents spot bright green water at Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Okay. Here's another one. North Carolina State University professor provides reasoning behind recent vibrantly blue ocean waters. Okay, and this was 51 minutes ago. You see over here? 51 minutes ago. This article was put out today. Okay, or yesterday and updated today. Let's go over to the next article. Why is the water so blue along the Carolina coast? Okay, blue and green water. I was born here in 1969 on this beach in question, basically, in South Carolina. And this has been the talk of the town, basically, for about 2 weeks now, that the water has become very clear. And it's not clear as like the Caribbean, but it's way clearer than I have ever seen it in my life. And then we have this one down in Florida, where Blue Springs has closed down because the water has turned brown. Normally this water is crystal clear, but something is causing this water in this spring to be brown. Yeah, it says it's been disrupted by hydrological events underground. So we've got something pretty interesting going on here, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but in the movie, let's go over here and run a little search here. Oops. Let's run a little search. The day after tomorrow. Okay. Most of y'all guys remember this movie. If I click the images, you can see some of the imagery that will remind you of what it was about. Most people remember this movie because it was very realistic. And what was behind this movie? Let's go take a look at the wiki on it real quick because it's important. Okay. This movie was based on a book. Okay. It was based on the book called The Coming Global Superstorm that was written by Art Bell, okay, and Whitley Strieber, something like that, okay. So it's talking about what? It's talking about that, right? And leading to this, okay, to an ice age, right? Or basically leading to what they're calling a superstorm, the coming global superstorm. If you remember in the movie, and we might be able to find some of the footage, let's see if we can. They showed the satellite imagery and radar, and it was day after tomorrow. Storm. Let's see if we can happen to see the imagery that they showed from the radar. Here we go. Let's take a look at this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and insert this footage of this right into this video here.
I've never seen anything like it. There's no point of reference. All I could see is cloud cover. What are you doing?
Taking infrared image of thermal currents. Sent to Houston, Korolev, your weather service.
I'll help you.
How big is this thing?
The vortex is 50 miles in diameter and growing. The two cells over Europe and Asia are even bigger.
Good God.
This one's going to hit New York inside an hour.
So now keep in mind all those news articles I showed you earlier about what they're saying right now today, and what you just seen from that movie and what they predicted a long time ago and what they've been showing us. Plus now let's take a look at my video from maybe a week ago, and it'll pretty much wrap up what I fear is going on. Remember the movie The Day After Tomorrow? I'm sure most of you do. Mainly they focused on these huge toroidal storms, hurricanes basically, low pressure centers, whatever you want to call them, okay, that spin up out of control, and they're running around the world causing catastrophic weather events, okay? And it's been well, let's see here. Day After Tomorrow, 2004 American science fiction disaster film. And you remember it had Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal, famous from Brokeback Mountain and whatever. Anyways, it also, this movie was based on a book, actually. It was called The Coming Global Superstorm by Art Bell, which you can see right there in the center of the screen. The Coming Global Superstorm by Art Bell. Remember old Art Bell? You know, that was on the radio late at night and always talked about interesting topics and all this. Well, apparently he wrote a book called The Coming Global Superstorm. Now, for someone that was on the radio and exposed to so many hundreds of thousands of people every night, I would tell you that he absolutely would have been a controlled asset, because anybody who has large, huge reach, they're either going to be a controlled asset or ran out of business. That's the way it works, especially when you're talking about the media, you know, the airwaves, you know, because the Prince of the Air don't like turning loose of his power, you might say. So what's the point here, Daniel? Well, let me show you what the point is here. Here's the book. Okay. And you notice it says right there what it's related to. Okay. So it was the part of the beginning of the sales pitch of what's coming, as they like to tell us, right? So let's look at the thesis for the book, okay? It says, first, the Gulf Stream and North American drift would generate a cordon of warm water around the North Pole, which in turn holds in a frozen mass of Arctic air. Second, if the North Atlantic drift, now pay attention. They're talking about the Gulf Stream, and they're talking about the North Atlantic drift. Pay attention, because we're going to look and see what's being said today about these subjects. that was in this book hypothesizing that this could happen or come, right? So it says, around the North Pole, which in turn holds in a frozen mass of Arctic air. Second, if the North Atlantic Drift were to shut down, that barrier would fail, releasing a flood of frozen air into the northern hemisphere, causing a sudden and drastic temperature shift. Okay. The book discusses the possible cause of the failure of the Gulf Stream. The melting of the polar ice caps could drastically affect the ocean salinity of the North Atlantic Drift by pumping a large quantity of fresh water into the world's oceans. Okay? And of course it goes on to tell more and more. But what I want to do is I want to show you what's in the news now. Because we're talking, let's see, what was it? The book was written in 1999. The movie came out in 2004. This is 2024 now. 20 years ago. 2 decades. That is the day after tomorrow. You see, because they're referring to a day, I believe, as a 10-year period, not a 100-year period. They're referring to a 10-year period, so the day after tomorrow. And we have had 2 decades, 2 10-year periods, 2 days, basically. I think that's the way they're looking at it, okay? Because now, when you look at the news, just run a Google search on North Atlantic Drift, okay? This is what you start seeing. Antarctic Ocean currents heading for collapse. New research sparks concerns that the ocean circulation will collapse. North Atlantic surface ocean warming and salinization in response to middle Eocene greenhouse warming. What is the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation? So what are they talking about? They're talking about the North Atlantic Drift. And they're saying that it's doing and what is happening exactly what was proposed in Art Bell's book and in the movie. They're saying that's happening. Okay? And you say, well, it's just a coincidence. They're not saying that it's like that movie. They're just talking about what's going on, and they're not pointing to the movie. Now, you're going to need to pause this if you want to read these, okay? To read all this. But if you look right here, in the reports, they're referring to the movie, The Day After Tomorrow. You see? Previously portrayed in both peer-reviewed research and climate disaster movie The Day After Tomorrow came a lot closer in the last month. Okay? So now of course we know they know history of the cycles that we're going through in this world. The cycles, everything goes through cycles. Not only the day, morning, noon, sunset, midnight, morning, noon, but then you also have weeks, Monday through Sunday, first day of the week. And that's all set by the moon, basically, is really what sets the days of the week and determines how many days there are in a week and what day is actually Sunday every week, or the Sabbath, not really Sunday because that's the worship of the sun day, but the Sabbath. The moon sets all that. So we got cycles in the moon. The moon cycles, okay? You got cycles in the sun, the 11-year sun cycle. You got all these cycles. Everything runs in a circle, basically, in a cyclonic circle, just like a torus, just like the weather phenomenon we're talking about. It's all cyclical, including why they're calling this a Great Reset now, okay? They know that certain dramatic weather events are coming because they have the books hidden in the Vatican and other places where they have all the history of all this stuff from previous cycles. Made them know it might have not been in a paper book. It might have been chiseled on stone. It might have been in some other way we don't even know about. But the history is there to prove that the earth goes through these cycles and cataclysmic events happen on a cyclical basis, okay? It's the way God set things up. And again, you can pause these and read them. I'll clear it so you can see it, so you can read through. I'm not going to read all of this, but it's a good read. You might want to check it out. It's propaganda. It's controlled propaganda because they know what's coming. Okay, and this is they're saying that, you know, these are the Gulf Stream and all the other water flows, okay, in general, okay. And they're saying that all this is happening and that basically they're saying that it's setting up for what we've seen in the day after tomorrow. Now, I wouldn't take this serious at all if I didn't know that they are setting us up, making us aware that this stuff is happening because they want to control it. They know it's happening, but they need to let us know it's happening so we can be afraid, so that therefore we'll give up freedoms in order to be safe. Okay? That's how they do it. See, it says, looks headed towards collapse this century, says a climate scientist. Okay? So, forgot to clear that one so you could read it. You had to pause it and read it if you want to. And I'm going to get to more specific thing here, but you can see that fancy word and everything. And we know, they know the cycles of this world, WHIRLED. Everything runs in a cyclical circle, including our world. That's why it's spelled WHIRLED. It's not a ball floating like a grain of sand in some giant space. It's just not. I know you were taught that, and I know I was taught that. But just like most things, it's a lie. They're saying that this is a recent photo of the Arctic. You know, the arc. You know what arc stands for? It's a word that references a circle, a cyclonic circle, an arc, the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? The Ark of what's the word I'm looking for here? Oh gosh. You know, Noah's Ark and all, and the ark. The point is that the word arc is referring to an arc. Like if you shoot an arrow, it goes out and comes down at an arc, at a predictable arc, okay? And everything in this world is predictable based on certain rules when it comes to the movement of things, including the world, time. It's how they can predict weather the way they do, along with the fact that they control the weather, because they said they were going to control the weather, and they do. And I think they're influencing things right now, as a matter of fact. Just trying to get through these slides so I can get to the next area here, because I had to read all this. See, they're talking about that again in the same article again. They're basically saying that it's setting up for it. And also ran a search for the Gulf Stream, okay? And guess what they're talking about? They're talking about the other thing that the movie was talking about, that the Gulf Stream itself fails and at a point. But right now they're saying that it is creating, let me just go on down here. and show you this. They're saying that it's creating these whirlpools of warm water that are cycling around and around in a cycle again up in the northern hemisphere, and that there are many more of them than normal, as they want to say, and it's causing ice melt. And when this ice melt happens and the salinity of the water changes, they're saying it's going to cause, well, the Day After Tomorrow movie. And so I just wanted to point it out to y'all guys that once again, they're using the propaganda from the past, the movies and all this, to give us a peek as to what's coming in the future, so when it happens, we're not quite as shocked, and we just go along with it like, yeah, well, they told us it was going to happen. This is where they're showing how much change there is in the warming up in the northern Arctic area. That's what they're saying and claiming. And one of the things that I've noticed, I don't know if y'all guys have noticed it in the weather, is how often now are we seeing toroidal low pressure systems spinning on land. Just a matter of a few weeks ago, there were 2 of them on land in the United States, just spinning around. There was one in Texas a week ago that was spinning in a circle on land. It came across land. It's not like a hurricane that comes from the ocean. They're coming down out of Canada and spinning down here. Kind of like what you're seeing right here. And right here. And right here. This is actually from today. It's in well, you can see it's in Germany and Poland, that area over there. So we're starting to see these cyclonic systems spinning up on land. This one's over water a little bit, but I'm seeing them on land on a regular basis, and seeing really weird things like it being 85 degrees in Canada and 70 in South Carolina just a few weeks ago. And of course, all of Canada's on fire, and it's been on fire. What do you reckon that heat is doing from all those fires that they're setting? What do you think? I guess mainly what I'm doing here is I'm letting you know information that I'm seeing and running across, and I thought that you might want to be aware of it. Okay?
I've got one that can see.
Logic Before Authority.